And yeah, so we're talking to Dara McKinley, and I'm y'all know my Memphis colloquialisms, and I know I haven't lived in Memphis in 20 years. I still want to be the country girl that's like Dara, but I'm gonna try to resist that urge. But I hope she forgives me if I do screw up her name because but I feel like she'll forgive anything I do because she's a master of forgiveness. So listen, after this dance break, me and Dara are coming back and we are going to talk about forgiveness, growing up in the Bronx, name changes, and what led her to become this guru on forgiveness. Dance off. Let's go.
I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy.
All right, so we're back with our beautiful guest. If you are watching this, then please make sure you like, comment, and share. And if you're not watching this, make sure guys, we are all over YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. We're on all the socials now. So I know you love hearing the sound of my beautiful voice, but then you have visuals now. In 2012, with 2 decades of psychology and spirituality behind her, Miss McKinley faced a difficult situation that none of her previous knowledge could improve. Feeling called to try forgiveness, she searched online for a forgiveness how-to and quickly discovered that there was so much information about why we should forgive, but nothing about how. So how? How the heck? I mean, because in this day and age that we're in, we're going to need a whole bunch of forgiveness for our neighbors, our coworkers, our family, our friends, our children, our spouses, our politicians, just to move forward with the way life is happening right now. So and I noticed you didn't really talk about the scenario that led you to having to forgive, but is that something that you can speak on?
No, totally. I'm happy to tell.
So what happened? What happened?
So in the early 2000s, I had an idea for a business and I was really eager to have it launch. And so I kind of rushed into partnerships with people who I would be incompatible with. But the business did take off. And so we kind of endured each other for as long as we could. And then in 2009, things fell apart and I got pushed out and I lost my share of the business. And at the time, I was 50% relieved because the relationships were so stressful. And I was like, oh, finally, like I have this out of my life. And I was 50% heartbroken, you know, because it was my brainchild. It was a business that brought me a ton of joy. However, at this point, I had 2 decades of psychology and spirituality behind me. So I was like, Dara, this is a huge blow, but you can get over it. And you are going to process your emotions and you're going to focus on the good and you're going to recreate your life and you're going to, all the things. And I did that. And 3 years later, I noticed that I still had a negative narrative kind of looping in my head, like when I'd be doing the laundry or washing the dishes, like I just found myself ruminating about what had happened. And so this paralleled kind of this slow slide into a mystery illness where I had like insomnia, anxiety, and, kind of like a low grade depression. And the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I had a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. And so I started freaking out. And essentially, I was born a very, very spiritual person. And, I can kind of have like these, down on my knees moments where if I demand a sign, I get one. So I arrived to that moment where I was just so upset and I was like, look, I need guidance. I need you to guide me out of this. Like I am freaked out to my core. And the message I got back was forgive. And that's what led me to then Google how to forgive.
Oh, and then once you started Googling, it's like, okay, you should forgive because you don't want your nervous system to be on fire. And when you hold on to anger, you're punishing them. And you saw all of the one-liners, but you didn't see any steps, the process.
Right. Well, so when I got the message to forgive, I actually, and I know I'm speaking for a lot of people right now. I didn't like the message. Right. And so I was like, I don't want forgiveness to be the solution to my problem. And kind of like I lost this whole business. There was something about the word forgive that it had the word give in it that I was like, I already gave a lot to this situation. I'm not giving another thing. So I had a ton of resistance. And that lasted about an hour because the message was so clear and so strong that's when I thought, okay, you know what? I'm a woman who can follow directions. I'm going to get online. I'm going to find whoever wrote the forgiveness 5-step how-to, and I'm going to give it a shot, because I'm also like extremely open. I'm always trying new things. I was like, all right, I can give forgiveness my best shot and see what happens. And so when I got online, I was like, oh my God, no one has said anything about how to forgive. And the little bit that I would find would be on some forum where some person like me would be like, but how do you do it? And the answer they would get back was, you just do it. And so again, like there are, and I want to preface this with, I have, now that I've been in the forgiveness world for over a decade, there are a lot of really incredible stories of people who have pardoned atrocities and wars and like really, really, really horrific things.
Yes.
And for them, the definition of forgiveness was pardoning, and that's what set them free. And I just want to say that I believe these people. I believe that, you know, that's what worked for them. I'm representing the people that for whatever the reason they come up against pardoning and it just doesn't register. Like
it's not, you're like, I can't find it in myself to pardon. You mentioned that. I was watching this true crime thing, and this one kid killed another kid, took another kid's life, and he went to jail, and the father of the deceased boy went to go and face his son's murderer and was like, hey, you know, I know you were a boy when it happened. I forgive you. So I understand what you're saying when you say we give them a pardon. We're not necessarily excusing or making the behavior okay, but what are we doing when we give somebody a pardon? What is that? How are we rationalizing that?
So to me, a pardon is like an immense act of compassion. And like that's what I think that man did with, you know, he understood this boy was a kid, you know, and that he'd be living with this for the rest of his life. And he had a huge amount of compassion for him in that moment and was like, hey, you know, I'm not going to beat you up about this for the rest of your life. You know, I want you to know that I offer you compassion in this moment. So I actually don't define forgiveness as pardoning. I say that pardoning is a result, a potential result of forgiveness. The mainstream definitions of forgiveness are pardoning, having compassion, ceasing anger, and letting go. And that's what, you know, that's the mainstream narrative that people are bumping up against
it's all like,
all the time.
How do I cease anger? How do I let go? How?
Right. Just let go. Just stop being angry. Just pardon them. Right. And again, for some people, I believe it works, you know, but then there's, you know, people like me and the people who are drawn to my work where it's like, I really just don't have the wiring to just let something go. So you know, what I discovered that night I realized that night in 2012, it was October 2012. And when I realized I Googled how to forgive, and I realized there was no help online, and I thought, oh, wow, I'm on my own right now. Like I need to, you know, figure this out. And I said, okay, Dara, you have 2 decades of psychology and spirituality behind you. You can figure this out. And so my first question to myself, so my first question to myself was, all right, I've been looping in this negative narrative for 3 years. What is the opposite of doing that? And my answer to that question was, oh, I would bless this situation with the highest love. And so with that answer, I took my first step into the world of forgiveness. So if you go to my website and study my work, I define forgiveness as one's ability to apply unconditional love. And by unconditional love, I mean divine love, God's love, Jesus's love, Mother Mary's love, however you define it. You know, I'm coming at this from a universal perspective. And the second part of that definition is and one's ability to identify exactly what needs it.
Say that again and break it down.
Okay. Forgiveness is one's ability to apply unconditional love in a very practical way. Okay. And one's ability to identify exactly what needs it.
Not who, not where, but what needs it.
And once those 2 things are accomplished, pardoning, ceasing anger, letting go, and having compassion, all potentially flow. I don't guarantee that they flow, but I guarantee at least one of them flows. I guarantee for sure. I'm not going to guarantee all four of them flows, but all of a sudden compassion is released. You don't care as much. You're like, I'm ready to put the past behind me. I see this person as another, mixed up human that is just doing the best they can. All of that just flows once you put those two pieces into place.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so you guys out there listening, I want you to think about the person that has most wronged you and what forgiving them would look like and why you're holding on to it. So according to your methodology, they would look at the person and I want you guys to just close your eyes, but not if you're driving, but just visualize the person that most wronged you. You see them walking down the street and they just look red. You see fumes, you see fire surrounding them. That's how hellish they've been to you. And you're like, I hate them. According to you, how am I supposed to change my view, my eyesight, my eye line of this evildoer that's wronged me?
So this is the beauty of it all. One of my favorite things about it is that if someone wronged you, what that often does is fill you with a lot of emotions, as you're describing right now, right? And so being an unconditionally loving human being in those moments is pretty much impossible for most of us, right? We're supposed to deal with this, these really strong emotions that have just been triggered by this person's crappy behavior. And now we're all supposed to be unconditionally loving in that moment. That doesn't add up for a lot of us, right? And so what I teach people to do is this unconditional love that I'm describing is a spiritual love that we have access to. God's love is a spiritual love that we have access to. So you don't have to be unconditionally loving. You need to know how to access God's love. And so you don't have to, it's almost like you don't have to do the forgiving. You need to know how to enlist it. I imagine, did you grow up in a Christian environment?
I did.
Right. So then you heard the story of when Jesus was on the cross and he's being crucified in his final moments, and he looks up and says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And so this is one of the most famous stories about Jesus and forgiveness, because here he is being crucified in his final moment.
He's full of holes, and he's asking God, his Father, to forgive his oppressor and his murderer in the moment while they are oppressing and murdering him.
Right.
That's some heavy stuff.
Right. So people tell this story because he walked his talk down to the last second of his life, his physical existence, right? What I find, and I love that part of the story, and I think that's, gorgeous and amazing. But what I find so interesting about that story is he actually looked up and delegated. He said, "Father God, can you please forgive these guys because they do not know what they do?" And if you had...
He's assigning his higher power to do the forgiveness work. So we need to assign our higher power, because it's like, hey, God, I'm going to beat her ass, but I'm asking you to help me to access the fact that forgiveness can happen for this person.
You got it.
And simultaneously for us, because we need forgiveness on a constant basis. Lord knows I do.
You got it.
Okay, so we can access it. Does this go along the lines of praying for your enemies? Because, as Christian folk, and the Buddhists and the Muslims, like everybody, and the Sikhs, everybody does it. We talk about loving our neighbor, forgiving our enemy. Does this go along, praying for our enemy, sorry. Is this kind of like a similar trope?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely, that praying for your enemy. And I also think praying for our enemy has so much more ease and flow to it once we have gotten down and dirty with forgiveness.
True. Because you can pray for them to get hit by an 18-wheeler. but you got to be specific with the prayer, y'all.
Right. Well, I just think like we need to, I don't know, like if you have a lot of resentment towards somebody and you pray for them, that's one thing. And if you feel inner peace about what happened and you pray for them, that's another thing, right? Like,
okay, let me ask you this. How do you find inner peace? And, you know, you're praying for this, you're asking God to access forgiveness or your higher power. You know, some of you guys call God universe, him, her, or they. I don't judge. I ain't got a heaven or hell to put you in. How are you accessing this when the person that you need to forgive, they're still doing the thing. They're still hurting you. They're still causing harm and they're unrelenting with it. How do you do that?
Right. So I have, over the years, as I have studied this, have identified 3 time frames that forgiveness can address. And then real quick. So like what I teach is a process. Like to me, you know, when people say like, you just do it, I can't just do it. Like I need to go into a process. So in terms of my ex-business partners, when I took that step into the land of forgiveness, 3 weeks later, I came through the other side and I felt an inner peace. So that's what I teach people. I teach an online course and I teach people how to go through a 3-week process. So it's a very intentional, like I'm deciding to forgive this thing, this person, whatever it is. And I'm going to go through this 3-week process and see how I feel when I get on the other side. So with that said,
everyone that listens to this podcast needs to enroll in that course. Even me, we are going to link it below, guys. And we're all going to support her and purchase the course.
So thank you.
And I mean that.
I'm glad I how long we've been talking for 15 minutes and I sold you. Okay.
So
there are 3 time frames that forgiveness can address. And the first one is I call episodic. And episodic is an incident and it's in the past. So episodic is like a difficult breakup. It's an accident that maybe happened. It's a bad relationship, but it's kind of like within a short period of time and it's behind you and you still have feelings about it, but you're not dealing with any of it in your present day life. The second one is enduring. Enduring is an ex that you have to co-parent with, a relationship you can't leave for some reason, an illness that you wake up every day and have to deal with. It's something that's in your daily life that you have to face every morning when you wake up. And the third one is epic. And epic is when things have gone on for a long period of time. And this concludes childhoods or long-term, relationships that have gone on for decades. Epic, in the epic time frame, when they hear about people who are have an epic time frame behind that, when they hear about forgiveness, they're like, oh yeah, I have something I want to forgive. And then they can typically feel overwhelmed by it and think to themselves like, but too much has happened, or where would I even begin to forgive that? So they can kind of go into cynicism very quickly and feel like, you know what, it's just too mammoth what happened, so I'm just not even going to bother. But this is another thing I discovered. All human beings are anatomically designed to forgive. And so you really...
Wait a minute. She said all human beings are anatomically designed to forgive. Like, I know we're designed to be greedy, to be hungry, to want to be free, but also to forgive.
Yep.
You're going to have to break that down for us, right?
Gladly. So forgiveness is a function of the right hemisphere of the brain. There are 2 hemispheres of the brain. The left hemisphere is our executive functioning. The left hemisphere is what gets developed in Western society. The left hemisphere is how we navigate our external world. The right hemisphere is how we navigate our internal world. And the right hemisphere, so typically the words attributed to the right hemisphere are creativity, intuition, spirituality, emotional intelligence, imagination. And so we're so busy developing the left hemisphere of the brain, which is our ability to read and write and code and, science and, bridges and all these things that make society function. And we typically treat the right hemisphere of the brain as just this kind of like cool side thing that's cool for weekends and vacations. Like we don't really give it the credit it deserves. And so it actually has all the facets for healing and regeneration. Just no one's taught about how to do that. And so once you learn how this part of the brain functions and how you can organize this part of the brain, you can create healing.
Wow. Wow. So then what are some of the obstacles that are blocking the average guy or girl or human being from pursuing forgiveness?
Well, a lot of people think that they're letting someone off the hook.
Oh, yeah. If I forgive you, then I make it okay what you have done or what you continue to do. So I gotta keep punishing you. I gotta.
Well, yeah, I don't have to keep punishing you, but I'm not going to let you off the hook. And so, someone just recently asked me in a podcast, like, do I believe in forgive but don't forget? And I do. I don't believe that you should let unsafe people into your life. I don't believe that you should. A person has to have boundaries if someone's not safe. You know what I just learned? I learned this 2 days ago. 1 in 10 people have an antisocial personality disorder. We have a 1 in 10 chance of meeting somebody who has zero interest in our in anything good about us. They just only want to take. So, when you think about that, like, we need to learn how to forgive and recover, because the chances of us meeting or going into a very difficult relationship with someone are very high. And especially because these people are very charismatic and are actually like really, they know how to zero in on somebody.
Yep.
So,
So you're going to meet one of those people. And if you're not, those of you listening, you're going to meet them, you're going to date them, you're going to marry them if you are not them yourself, but they're out there. So like you said, the probability is so high that we need to go ahead and arm ourselves with this tool of forgiveness.
With boundaries and the ability to recover. Yeah, with forgiveness. Right.
Resilience. The ability to recover is just practicing resilience. Yes. What does resilience look like in terms of one's ability to forgive?
Especially, in this day and age, when we're kind of being assaulted constantly by difficult themes and difficult issues in the world, and just surviving in the Western world, right, is definitely is a huge assault to the system. And one of the worst things I think that can happen is if you don't know how to move that energy through your system, you are susceptible to adopting a very negative narrative and getting severely depressed. I
like that. Leading into the health ramifications, you're the second woman this week that I have spoken to that mentioned, I had something emotional happen in my life and I started to experience these physical symptoms, sickness, depression. I always say wrinkles and cellulite, just like hair loss, little things. For me, it was fibroids, just recurring fibroids, like all of these things that recur because our body is so out of whack and so imbalanced. Holding on to the thing adds a weight and adds heaviness to us. But can you speak to like the physiological effect? I know you yourself experienced them, the sickness. And I really want us to drive this point home because so many people are listening to this and they're having these autoimmune diseases and all of these things that are popping up and they're not attributing it to something that's in here.
Right.
So can you speak to that for us?
Right. So, I kind of view the human being within four different experiences. There's the behavioral experience. Those are our actions. There's the thought experience. That's how, we perceive the world. There's the practical experience. That's how we take care of our bodies and organize, the things that we can touch and, it's, science is all in that realm. And then there's the emotional experience. And the emotional experience is just one of those worlds that a human being needs to take care of, just like you need to take care of your body, just like you need to take care of your thoughts, just like you need to take care of your actions. You just have to take care of your emotions. And it's no big deal. There is such a taboo and stigma around what it means to feel big emotions, and we're all feeling it. That's what it is to be human. And so there's actually, this is a big component in my course, because when I teach people to apply unconditional love, if you're emotionally congested and carrying around a huge emotional burden, unconditional love can't really go the distance because it's getting blocked. Anyway, back to what you're saying. Your point is that stuff accrues, just like crap would accrue in a garage, just like plaque would accrue on your teeth. Like, if you don't take care of it and know how to move it through in just a very practical way, it's going to accrue in your body, drain you, and, in the worst case scenario, eventually cause some damage. Right. And so, like, emotional circulation, I happen to be going through something very big right now as I'm doing all these podcasts, and I'm very attuned to what I'm feeling in my body and noticing. And it's interesting because I'm 53. So at this age, things do really create an overt somatic response. You know what I mean? Like, I can feel something in my body, and I can tell if it's emotional. And I'm very grateful.
You're that in tune at this point.
Right,
yeah.
Right. I'm a highly sensitive person also. So this stuff kind of just like, I couldn't get away from it even if I tried. But anyway.
Are you a water sign? If you believe
girl.
in that sort of thing?
What's your sign? Cancer?
Tell me yours first. I
guess that you're a Cancer, but I could be wrong. I'm like a triple Pisces.
Oh my God. So I'm July 22nd.
Oh, Leo. So you're right.
So
you're right on the cusp.
I'm right on the cusp. Yeah. So people that know me well say Cancer, and you're a highly intuitive person. So you said Cancer, but on the outside, it's something different. And you're triple Pisces. Oh, I love the fishies. Okay, sorry. Go on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
So I just think
because this was so good.
Yeah. So I just think that emotional self-care needs to become as mundane as brushing your teeth, right? Like when we get emotionally too full, like nothing flows. And when we move emotions through, then the world can be our oyster.
Let me tell y'all something that are listening. Some of y'all are so emotionally constipated, and I don't know if you need to stick something in there and move some stuff around, or you need to go and work it out. I get rid of my constipation by going out and taking a good run. So some of you need to take some spiritual laps around and purge some stuff while you're out there on the street. Leave it on the street. Don't bring it back into your space. This is our space. These skin bags that we're gifted with for 80, 90, 100 years, however long we're going to be here. This is your space, and it's up to you to protect and uphold that. So let me ask you this though, because some of the atrocities of the world, and we see people, I love how you said it, pardoning. But what about what's unforgivable? Are there things that are just it's unforgivable in totality? And how do we handle those?
So I believe there are things that are unexcusable and unpardonable. And I believe in accountability. I think accountability is an incredibly healthy thing. I think that's how we learn. I think that's how humanity evolves forward. I think it's incredibly important to hold institutions and people and systems accountable for their actions. And here comes the provocative part. There's nothing that is unforgivable by my definition, because my definition is the application of unconditional love. And unconditional love really is unconditional. And that can be really tricky for human minds to wrap their heads around, because the human mind is conditional. But it's like sunshine. If you put something in the sun has zero ability to withhold itself from what it's touching. And that's what unconditional love is like. Unconditional love is
be sunshine.
It's a medicine. I know. I just said be sunshine to a Leo. So you were like,
I love it. Like, shine the light on everybody, so people
right.
Be
warm, so if you decide, sunshine. And why people, it's not about pardoning others. People step onto the forgiveness path if they want to feel free from something. Yeah. That's the reason. And if you want to feel free from something, then it's like, okay, now let's learn how to put whatever it is that you want to feel free from in the path of unconditional love. Unconditional love is a medicine. It's a free medicine that we all have access to.
Let's put this into some practical terms, and
Yes.
let's talk about some scenarios, right? So I spoke to someone recently, and she was in a 30-year marriage. She found out that her husband had been cheating on her for maybe the last half of the marriage. He had cheated on her in one of the most recent instances with her daughter's fiance's mother. So this woman was coming over their house for Christmas, and they were going to be mother-in-laws together because their children were in a relationship. Somehow this man jumped his pickle stick over to this newly divorced woman's, in her life. And so she essentially came in, took the man, and I'm using took in air quotes that for those of you that aren't watching this, because I don't believe you can take somebody's man, you can have them. But then also she took the children with her because she and dad got together and started alienating the biological mother. And they had more to offer because mom was now a single woman. She was a housewife for 30 years, so she didn't have much of an income. So she's moving out of this big, beautiful house they had into a 1-bedroom apartment. The kids went over to live with dad and his mistress, who became his new wife, was also the daughter's fiance's mother. It's sticky and nasty. So these people are in a family unit. So now this woman has the responsibility to still see this lady. They're going to be co-grandmothers together. To me, it feels like a nightmare. In this instance, what you just knowing like that, where would she start with her process of forgiveness?
So she's in the enduring time frame. So she's in something that she needs to wake up and face, every morning. And so people who are in that time frame would step onto the forgiveness path because they want to be as emotionally healthy as possible as they traverse this difficult journey. They want to choose the higher path. So they want to walk away from these difficult interactions, knowing that they handled things from the highest perspective and as gracefully as possible. And they also want guidance. They want to be, unconditional love is an incredibly guiding force. That's one of the byproducts of forgiveness, and it's one of my favorites. They want, to not feel alone in this incredibly difficult journey, and that the universe is guiding them forward into the highest outcome. And so when you're in an enduring time frame, those are the big wins. And, quite frankly, what you just said, because being that this is my business, it's not an uncommon thing, what you just described, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so, she really also wants to get as much support and there's lots of support online for this scenario that you just described, but she wants to, really get support on a practical level for having to traverse this journey. And, above all, let unconditional love recreate her life, because it's one of the most creative forces out there. And it really helps you see that you are not victim, and your identity is not rooted in this tragedy.
Right. I like that. Your identity is not rooted in this tragedy. And one of the common themes that I'm finding after a person experiences such extreme betrayal is the creativity. You mentioned that, you mentioned that, and that's a word that I'm hearing. And then those of you that listen to this, you've heard quite a few people come on and talk about that creativity that comes along with forgiveness. How do we I know one of the things that makes it easy to hold on to angst and strife, and I don't want to say hatred because that's such a strong word, but feelings of dislike for another human being. One of the main things that I recognize that we do, especially in the community that I serve, which is people in chaotic blended families, is we dehumanize the other person. We take them down a notch so that we're not seeing them at our level, because that keeps us from having to be compassionate. How do we start to rehumanize? And you mentioned something earlier that spoke to this, but how do we start to rehumanize this person? Because I feel like that's one of the steps that you need to take in order to start the process of accessing and delegating forgiveness.
Right. So I think when we're dealing with so you're basically talking about difficult extended family, right?
Yeah, or just even in your instance, because I think when someone commits an atrocity against us, it's natural to dehumanize them because
Right.
you can't be human if you've done this thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
You've assaulted me, you've hurt me, you've stolen, you've betrayed me. Clearly you can't be like me.
Mm-hmm.
But if I admit that you're like me, then that's admitting that I'm flawed too. And I can't do that right now because I need to be hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we get back to the place of seeing them as just a regular old guy or girl who did a bad thing to us?
Well, I think the power is always an inside job, meaning like we, as I said, like we have a 1 in 10 chance of being in relationship with a person who lacks empathy, right?
Oof,
And
yikes.
if you're someone who has a lot of relational integrity, when you come in face to face with someone who has zero relational integrity and is really just out to use, that is an incredibly disturbing experience. So I think like part of it is that like kind of like accepting the fact that certain people are just don't see the playing field in the same way that you do. And if you constantly expect them to, you're always going to end up upset. It's really like, it's
Always.
about this huge act of acceptance that like, oh, wow, when I go to this, let's just say this family gathering, to this Christmas thing, like I need to know when I enter that door that I actually am going to be provoked and something's going to happen that's going to make me upset. It is going to happen. So I need to prepare myself before I step in the door and have an action plan for when I leave to restore myself after, being around someone who I find very triggering. So that's, one thought I have. And it's something that I teach at the end of the course because I have a lot of people who do come to the course who are in the enduring time frame. And so it's like, how do I use unconditional love when I still have to go into the ring with someone who I find really disturbing and who doesn't seem to have any respect for my inherent value? And that's one of the big things that gets provoked with these types of people is they make us question our self-worth. Right. And that's like one of the, worst experiences for a person to have, to be sitting there wondering if they're not enough. Right. So anyway, so there's like a whole like psychology that goes on in the world of betrayal and forgiveness that people can wrap their heads around. But as I said, like, I just think, the world is disturbing. So having like a really strong and tight restoration process is very practical.
Yeah.
If you want to rock it.
Constantly evolving and constantly. So it sounds like we need to just adopt this and it needs to be a part of our routine because like you said, we're going to be constantly provoked. Even scrolling social media, you're gaslit so much just by opposing ideas or things or words from humans. So we have a lot more access
like having boundaries and being very solid in the truth that you're an invaluable being. And knowing that because look, you could think about it also like these, like when we hang out with somebody who doesn't have relational integrity and we feel upset afterwards, what we did is we kind of like took their poison, right? So it's like, imagine it's like you have to be able to clear yourself of their poison because it's not
constantly,
us,
Yes.
protect. Yeah. And then if it does penetrate, clear it out. And as again, my bias, there's lots of ways to clear it out. My bias is that unconditional love is one of them.
I like it. I'm here for it. And, love is patient. Love is kind. Love keeps no record of wrongs. Love, and I don't want to sound like Mary Poppins here, but I too believe love is legitimately the answer. Right. Finding and being able to see love in even the most unlovable human being or unlovable from our experience.
Exactly. And being amazing at embodying it. Like really being like, people so often say like, forgiveness is the most important thing you can do. And I've definitely like thought about that a lot over the years. Like, is forgiveness really the most important thing you can do? And I actually think having a rock solid connection with divine love is the most important thing you can do.
That's definitely up there for sure.
And forgiveness is a path to that connection, so yeah.
Wow. I love it. So, can you just tell us about the course as we get ready to wrap up? Cause I want you guys to go and find her. I want us to, I legitimately mean this. And y'all know I don't really endorse a lot of people, but I hope that you've learned as much as I have today. There were a lot of teachable moments, and you dropped a lot of gems. So tell us about the course and tell everybody where to find you.
My website is what I Googled the night I decided to figure out how to forgive. It's howtoforgive.com. It's a 6-week course that I offer once a season. And within that 6-week period, I teach people this 3-week process of how to access and apply unconditional love and how to identify exactly what needs it. And I just go, about it in a very, I hope you can kind of vibe that I have a very practical nature. So I go about it in a very practical way because I want people to just have a deep and lasting experience of forgiveness. So when they graduate, they have it, they practice it. It's not just this fleeting, cool spiritual ideal, that doesn't really land and have legs. My goal in this course is to give it legs. And so essentially I teach the beginning of the course is teaching people how to access unconditional love, which for me was a very easy thing being a triple Pisces. But I also know that for some people, it's through their family that they experience, through their creativity, through their, through nature, through passions, so I help people understand where it's showing up, because unconditional love is a spiritual love that's flowing through us and for us. And so it's identifying where it is. And then once you got it, there's the medicine. And then I teach them how to use the right hemisphere of the brain and how to apply it. I teach them how to get those emotions flowing so that the unconditional love can really saturate them and saturate the situation that they're forgiving. And then we practice that over a short period of time and graduate.
Wow, that's absolutely beautiful. Listen, I hope you guys, and again, guys, I'm going to share the links below so that we can all go and access some forgiveness and start to delegating it. Thank you so much for listening, guys. And please comment, show our guest love. We need to spam her social media, tell her how much we love her. Make sure you tell her you found her. You heard her here on I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall. And I will see you all Tuesday after next, everywhere your favorite podcasts are streamed. It's another episode of I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall.
I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. Naja Hall.